first during the Bischoff Hogan era, the crowd seemed peculiar. There was this hippie bunch that were standing there, tried the best they did to just get into the wrestler's head, and the rest of the people just seemed passed out. However, this match, with a lot of changes tonight. They had four-sided ring. I know a lot of people are going to be crazy about that and going to lash out, they're going to cry, they're going to whine and whatever. I don't think that's that big of a deal. Yeah, it actually seemed like this four-sided ring kind of slowed down the action a little bit. It wasn't as impactful as it normally is, and I think the most, if anyone is going to suffer over this, it's the X Division, because they kind of thrived on this six-sided ring, being able to climb the ropes wherever they were, turnbuckles, I mean, and scaling the ropes where they stood in the ring. But on the whole, I think it doesn't really matter. And what I've heard, a lot of people, that my friends that doesn't watch TNA, they watch some WWE, or I heard people overall, the thing that the people that don't watch TNA, that bothers them the most is, well, it looks fake. This is six-sided ring. It looks like goofy circus ring or something. So maybe this could be having TNA getting more respected and more accepted in these people's eyes. I don't know about that, but I don't think that's big of a deal. The new entrance, yeah, I'm for a change, and I didn't like this heel face entrance. It's like telling, well, you're supposed to cheer him, you're supposed to boo him. And then one week, the one guy could come out of one tunnel, the next week came out of another. Kind of TNA telling us whom to cheer, whom to boo, not giving the fans the choice themselves, really. So yeah, about the ring, however, what I could see from the matches tonight, I'm going to talk about that as I go through them, is that some wrestlers seemed disoriented in this very ring. Like the Tara ODB match, Tara won falls 2-0. She's the new Knockouts champion, and that kind of means that ODB now has to step down. Tara won cleanly, and she's going to move on to another opponent. This was an interesting match. It was kind of a good match, but it kind of was stalling. It went portion-wise, fast, slow, and it didn't really get going. And that was a problem with some other matches as well. We can move on to the Elijah Burke and D'Angelo Dinero versus Desmond Wolfe. I hope this, by the way, this chick that Desmond Wolfe has, that is no new gimmick that he has, because I liked his in-your-face style, telling it like it is, a rude British style where he shut the people off and shoot from the mouth whenever he talked. I hope this is not kind of sort of mixing in women with his character or something. I think they should at least keep him the way he was. And that match was good. That was a very good match, and I think it was very good by TNA to let two former and two original TNA guys that are considered TNA guys before this Hogan Bischoff thing started to have a long, good match. But same thing there. It kind of stalled. It went like it really didn't really get going until the end of the match. It was a very good match. Desmond Wolfe deserved the win. It had its impactful moments, but same problem there. The opening match, Kendrick made his debut to face Amazing Red, and I think Kendrick will thrive in this X Division. He belongs there, and it was a very good match. Not as good as it could have been, nowhere close as good as it could have been, but it was a very good match. Amazing Red retained, and that's to say, well, most people see he is a former WWE guy. He has no chance against the TNA guy who's the champion because he won and retained. Most people probably would have expected Kendrick to win that match. The problem with this pay-per-view overall is that they didn't really hype the matches. You didn't know the card, the matches, until like 1 or 2 weeks before the actual pay-per-view, and I can't blame. That's not Hogan or Bischoff's fault, because maybe TNA's fault, but TNA can't help, and above all, Hogan or Bischoff can't help that December 24th and December 31st, New Year's Eve and Christmas Eve, both were on Thursdays, where TNA didn't really want to air an ordinary Impact show. So that's kind of fortunate for TNA, just bad luck. But I think they've done pretty good. Despite that short time they had to build up all these matches, they did kind of a good job still, because they didn't have much time. And yeah, I think the Kurt Angle AJ Styles match, that was a fantastic match. That also kind of slow in the start, but I think it picked up later, and I think maybe this was the entire picture of the entire pay-per-view, because you had these kind of slow matches starting off, except for Amazing Red and Kendrick. Slow matches didn't really get going until we saw Matt Morgan and Hernandez beat British Invasion in a very good match. And I think it was about time to get British Invasion lose the titles, because they had them for a while and they wrestled more or less every tag team, and the tag team division needs to be get an influx of new tag teams, which they are getting as we speak. That was a good match, and then they kind of picked up. Mr. Anderson Abyss was a good match as well. Kind of picked up. Anderson is full of speed. He's fast paced and he's very intense in the ring. However, he didn't really get the crowd behind him, and this has been the problem with TNA before when they have pay-per-views. That during the impacts, one guy is over, and when they go to pay-per-view, they get a completely different fan base. Very interesting to speak. However, Mr. Anderson won this match by cheating with the brass knuckles. The fans, they cheater towards him, so it was pretty well received, and very interesting throughout the night. He was supposed to face Bobby Lashley, was Abyss. But what happened? Yeah, he knocked Bobby Lashley out. I think this is a great way to actually finally have the fans get a good approach to Bobby Lashley, because the problem with Bobby Lashley is that TNA have no clue how to book him. First they booked him as an MMA guy in TNA, kind of making the TNA fans alienate him. Then it was a problem because he wasn't over at all, and then they had a problem because they couldn't separate Bobby Lashley, the MMA fighter, from the wrestler. They kept intermixing them, having as if he couldn't get knocked out or couldn't tap out. I mean, if you're a wrestler, you got to be able to be knocked out. If you get a chair shot, you are knocked out, and they got to be able to have Bobby Lashley knocked out, and I believe that's why they did it. What's the symbolical value, or why Abyss knocked Bobby Lashley out backstage? Simply to tell fans Bobby Lashley is human, and to simply separate him and have people accept him as a wrestler and not the MMA fighter, because that's right, if you are an MMA fighter, you can never ever get knocked out. But it's kind of different in wrestling, where you can always be saved by the bell by simply kicking out the 2.5 when the referee is counting. But if you're knocked out in MMA, you're screwed. But they gotta separate that, and it finally seems as if they are doing that. So symbolical value of Abyss knocking Bobby Lashley out. Other matches this night: Sean Morley, Daniels also wasn't very well received. I don't know where they're going with Morley. That was a troublesome match in one way. I hope that down the road, next match, Daniels will get a rematch and he will beat Morley, and it will all work out pretty well, because overall in TNA I don't think Morley should go. If he's even gonna stay in TNA, his win tonight at Genesis indicates that he's gonna stay, but I don't think at any circumstance at all that he should be put above Daniels. So I believe rematch there, Daniels will win, get the last word. It didn't help Morley that he slipped when he was about to deliver his big splash from the top rope. And some fans, the hippie group, as I talked about, just turned his back on him, kind of protest, but I don't buy that much, because they acted like that all night long. Protest against everything. It seemed more like an anarchy group of some sort. I'm going to talk about the AJ Styles Kurt Angle match. It could have been either that the wrestlers are disoriented in the ring, and that we as viewers aren't accustomed to see them wrestle in a squared circle, but it could also be that TNA management booking, we had a problem with that before. I've said that because they booked like every match meant the world earlier, like last year, the spring and summer, but then they kind of realized they gotta have progression during a pay-per-view. Maybe this is what it was: slow-paced matches, kind of methodical, having their quick, fast-paced segments, but overall pretty not that memorable matches. But then when you walked on to the main card, you had the Bear Money versus Six-Pack, and Kevin Nash. I don't believe Scott Hall was ever able to and thought to be wrestling tonight. They just booked him because they knew if Six-Pack is going to wrestle, no one's going to buy the pay-per-view. So that's why they said Scott Hall was going to wrestle, and then during the pay-per-view shifted it to Six-Pack. That was a very good match, and they kind of moved on with the progression. I said Mr. Anderson versus Abyss was also a very good match. And AJ Styles versus Kurt Angle, awesome match as it well picked up. Ric Flair came out. He tapped out AJ Styles, but Ric Flair had pulled the referee out of the ring. So I kind of thought, hey, well, if he's going to retain here, he's got to turn heel, because he can't tap out and then win the match. He's going to look like a fraud. And where's Ric Flair going to go from there? So I understood kind of when Ric Flair pulled him out of the ring, he tapped out. Why did he do that? I think he didn't have to tap out. Now he's going to look weak if he wins. But I understood kind of from there that, well, he's going to turn heel. And as interesting as that is, as shocking as that is, it is very interesting, because a lot of shock value during this pay-per-view. People are going to talk about it for sure. They got to get some time and months to work with this new talent. to get it going with a new ring. It was so much new settings, and in one way shocking, good, very, very interesting. But on the other hand, they finally tried to book AJ Styles as this credible, strong champion. They didn't have to turn him heel, because now everyone's going to hate him. He won't look as credible anymore. He was finally looking as that front figure that could carry a wrestling company. Now he's not going to do that anymore, and that kind of bothers me. But I'm not sure. That's what the negative part of it is. But still, very shocking. I never saw that coming. Shock value, yes. Brooke Hogan, what's with her? Yeah, she could be at the TNA pay-per-view. Ringside, yeah, I guess. But what's the point of her interacting with all the wrestlers? No deal whatsoever. Overall, a pretty good pay-per-view, an okay pay-per-view. There is in the midst of a big change, ring-wise, wrestling-wise, roster-wise, entrance-wise, everything-wise. So it's going to take a while for everything to settle, and from there on we could judge. Thank you for watching, share your thoughts, have a nice day.